Want to address the events of yesterday and last night. And first, I want to say that we all want to live in a city where we feel safe and protected, where we feel empowered, and that our voices are heard, where our children have bright futures free from mistreatment and harm, and where the values of kindness, equity, justice, and civility are lived and experienced by all. Our community is in a lot of pain and anguish right now. People are scared and concerned for their safety. For many, these feelings are new and shocking, while for others, and especially for people of color, these feelings are all too familiar and just a part of daily life each time they step outside their homes, interact with those who may judge them by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. The peaceful protests are making important and needed calls for change in our city and in our country. They are calls for justice, for the safety of all Americans, for a recognition that Black lives matter. They are calls for an end to racism and inequality that continue to infect our institutions and our society. These are important messages for everyone to hear and to consider how they might make a difference in achieving a world that treats everyone with kindness, equity, justice, and civility. To those who gathered to lift up their concerns and to have their voices heard, I want you to know that I hear you. I value the message and the experiences that you are sharing with me, with other city leaders, with our law enforcement agencies, and our broader community. I am listening, and I will continue to hear you, and I will continue to listen and hear you every day that I am your mayor. As I stated yesterday, I support the goals of the peaceful protesters that have demonstrated in Lincoln and shared their voices and calls for change over the past 3 days. Yet as the mayor, I am tasked with keeping all our residents safe and keeping our community intact. In this role, I cannot and will not condone violence or destruction of our city. Yesterday, I issued a curfew in an attempt to facilitate protests to take place peacefully, but to limit damage to our community, like that we saw overnight on Friday and Saturday. We anticipate that additional protests will take place this afternoon and evening. I want to make clear, it is not the peaceful protesters that create concern for me or for our city, but the bad actors who have co-opted those activities and engaged in destruction of property and committing violent acts against law enforcement officers and other residents and other protesters. These actors often have their own separate agendas, and their views do not necessarily align with those of the peaceful protesters. This afternoon, I extended the curfew in Lincoln for another night, this time beginning at 9 p.m. and lasting till 6 a.m. Again, this curfew will limit the hours when people may travel public streets and will prohibit gathering or congregating in public places within the city in order to preserve the health, safety, and property of our community members. During these curfew hours, only people who must leave their home to go to work, to seek medical attention, or the assistance of law enforcement shall be permitted upon the public streets of Lincoln. Last night, with the curfew in place, we saw continued engagement with law enforcement on our city-county campus, but less property damage than the previous 2 evenings, and crowds dissipated around 12:30 a.m., many hours before that was accomplished in the early hours of Saturday and Sunday. I want to clarify that the role of the National Guard, who will continue to support our law enforcement response, will do so again tonight. The Guard has been engaged in a support role only, focused on protecting city infrastructure and property. This role has been filled by LPD officers in prior days, and with the Guard's assistance, our police can play other roles in the response to what's happening on our streets. The Guard is only authorized to intervene in incidents where property destruction is attempted or occurring, protecting the infrastructure of our city. Again, I want to thank Governor Ricketts and General Bohack for their support in providing additional resources to bolster our community's safety. Yesterday, many of us witnessed concerning actions taken in response to the protests that we wish to proactively address. Chris Dunker, a reporter with the Lincoln Journal-Star, was briefly detained by a member of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office last night before being recognized as a member of the media, and then he was promptly released. We acknowledge and embrace the right of the media to cover events like these, including after a curfew has started. We are also conscious of the fact that today is the first day that bars are allowed to reopen, and we understand that the curfew will come into conflict with the intention of that directed health measure that would allow them to reopen. This, of course, will have a negative impact on already struggling businesses. And there can be no comparison made between the grief of our community over the senseless deaths of countless peoples of color and the economic impacts that are felt by those whose livelihoods have suffered, first by the pandemic and now by acts of destruction and vandalism. But we are nonetheless committed to doing everything we can to minimize needless suffering, including needless economic suffering. Finally, we want to acknowledge that 53 people were taken into custody by law enforcement last night. All of those detained have since been released. Yesterday, I said that real peace building requires us to have difficult conversations, to listen, to heal, and to work for justice for all. In that spirit, there are several things we are doing to support the building of community bridges and advance the cause of justice for all. First, we will create opportunities for community dialogue where elected leaders and government officials can listen to residents who want to express their concerns. This means creating forums in the coming days and weeks for residents to speak directly with elected leaders. We'll have more details to announce about those in the coming days. Second, we are looking at ways we can make it easier for residents of Lincoln to express their concerns with police performance in this community through our Citizen Police Advisory Board. The Citizen Police Advisory Board, or CPAB for short, was established long ago by the Mayor's Office to resolve citizen complaints regarding police performance. The Lincoln Municipal Code currently requires that complaints with police performance must be filed in person at the Mayor's Office unless it is shown that disability or economic hardship makes personally filing these complaints difficult or impossible. We are looking at ways that we can amend this language to make it easier for residents to raise their voice when it comes to police performance in our community, such as by allowing online filing of complaints. In the meantime, if you have a complaint that you'd like to file regarding police performance, you may come to the Mayor's Office to do so. If disability or economic hardship prevents you from filing your complaint in person, or if risks related to COVID-19 make travel difficult, please email CPAB, that stands for Citizen Police Advisory Board, CPAB at lincoln.ne.gov, and we will make other arrangements for your voice to be heard. And third, we are aware that some community-led initiatives are underway to promote dialogue and healing, justice, and accountability. We hope to support and amplify those initiatives where appropriate, while giving space for people to come together in their own way. And with that, we'd like to take your questions.
I am going to start off, Mayor. Did the curfew achieve your goal last night?
That is a complicated question. I took no pleasure in imposing a curfew. It was done with the awareness that there are many threats to the safety of people and property in our community, some of which are public and some of which are intelligence that I cannot speak to. We also understood that the curfew in Omaha has a relationship to the curfew in Lincoln. And that by establishing one in Omaha, people may travel to our community if they feel that they have better ability to operate and cause unrest here. We did see a couple of positive things that came of the curfew. There was not as much gathering of numbers of people late into the night. And I would just remind people that one of my concerns as mayor right now is to try to keep everyone safe, not only from physical harm that you can see, but from the invisible threat of the COVID-19 disease and the novel coronavirus. I'm very worried about the potential for infections to increase as a result of the close contact and prolonged gathering that is coming with these demonstrations and with prolonged activity into the late night. So people did go home earlier as a result of the curfew, and in that sense, I would say it was successful. There was less destruction of property, and in that sense, I would say it was successful. But I'm not happy about the curfew. I hope we can put an end to the curfews. I hope we can continue to have peaceful gatherings and constructive conversations, not just today, not just tomorrow, but every day forward. Because the march towards justice isn't a one-day march. It's one that takes all of us walking together each and every day.
I believe this question was probably better for Jack. Law enforcement began to move in on protesters around 8:30 p.m. Who gave the order for them to do so?
Good afternoon. On that specific question, there is an incident command structure that has been set up. Present in the incident command is members of the Lincoln Police Department, the Lancaster County Sheriffs, the Nebraska State Patrol, the National Guard, Lincoln Fire and Rescue, and other members of the Nebraska State Patrol who are providing assistance. The directive following actually is about 40 minutes of requests by our staff to break up and follow the directive of the curfew came from the incident command structure itself. And so that was a collective, and it was led by the Lincoln Police Department.
Is the city is the city pursuing charges against all 53 people arrested last night?
The 53 that were cited will be brought, as the process goes, will be brought to the city's attorney's office for review, and who will decide whether to file those particular charges. And on that particular component, my apologies that 39 of the 53 that have been mentioned by the mayor are either have been released from jail or in the process of being released from jail. The additional have other underlying charges not related to this particular incident that are being dealt with as far as with the criminal justice system.
This one is from Charlie Brogan at KFOR. What can you tell us about the individuals or groups behind the violence?
And again, this is part of the discussion. I want to reiterate the Lincoln Police Department and our approach to this. We are focused on providing a safe venue for people to voice their concerns. We believe in that. It is a necessary component of positive change, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward.
Who was behind the violence?
As far as who is behind the violence and identifying those particular people from the crowds of people, it is part of ongoing investigations. There have been arrests made for assault of officer, for other violence that occurred not related to, that was just part of the ongoing incident. But as far as who the crowds are, they represent the cross-section of Lincoln and also from other communities outside of Lincoln.
Well, he's particularly asking about any groups, like an organized.
We have no information to know who those groups might be, confirmed information.
Repeat the question. It says they're having trouble hearing the question.
Thank you. And my apologies. I will repeat the question that's being posed as it comes forward.
Okay, one more from Twitter, and then we'll try to take some live. A couple more. Why was the K-9 unit there? Was that necessary?
The K-9 unit is part of the overall crowd disbursement, and again, it is one of these particular support functions that we're only using when violence is being perpetrated on the officers themselves, who we are asking to both protect property and to protect their own selves as they're being pelted with bottles and rocks, razor blades, a countless number of things.
And how much is the additional law enforcement costing the city, and how is it being paid for?
The fiscal impact is something that we are tracking internally, working with finance. I don't have a firm number right now, but I can attest that the costs are significant. And as we continue to have to bring in staff to be able to supplement all of the other functions that we normally are asked and expected to do, that cost is going to continue to grow.
I'm hoping we can take some questions through Zoom, but I'm not sure. Someone's asking, I can't hear.
Chief, this is Bill Shammer with 1011. A couple follow-ups for you. Sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, Bill. And if others can't hear the question, just let us know.
Chief, we had heard rumors that some of the bottles might have contained gasoline. Is there anything to back that up?
That has been reported to us and by employees. We're attempting to determine where the source of that information is. While the smell on the exterior of the clothing of several officers is that of gasoline, we can't point to a specific incident that we've been able to identify based upon the chaos of where the source of that gasoline may be. And so we have not recovered any independent bottles. Let me back up there. We have recovered independent bottles that contain gasoline that are Molotov cocktails. But as far as first dousing an employee and then taking other action.
And I apologize if this question was asked earlier, but we had heard on the news last night from a demonstrator that some sort of compromise had been reached. We had seen a handshake. Was there anything of the sort that as long as things remain peaceful, that those demonstrators would be allowed to remain last night?
Bill, must be directed to the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you.
Are there other questions from the media? All right, well, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope everyone will take time to seek understanding where they are confused, to build bridges where there are none, and that you'll consider how you too can make this a more just, equitable, and peaceful community. And now I'm getting another question, so yes, Diane?
Okay, there was a woman with the protest group rendering medical aid to others who was shot in the face with a rubber bullet, suffering pretty severe injuries. Should we expect more of these types of injuries in the coming nights?
Well, I sure hope not. And one of the ways that everyone can be safe is to adhere to the curfew. And no rubber bullets are being fired proactively. And I'm sorry to hear that someone experienced pain and physical pain as a result of rendering aid. We all need to be taking care of each other. We all need to provide assistance and aid to one another. And I would hope that in seeking change, those who are demonstrating will listen to the words of the leaders at the rally at the Capitol yesterday, that peaceful demonstration and peaceful change is how we're going to build the bridges to get there, because we've got to do this together. And I want to acknowledge that that's a really difficult work. It's really difficult to be patient for change, to be kind when others may not extend kindness to you. We all have to do better, and we have to do it together.
Mayor, this is Bill. One
Hi, Bill.
quick follow-up. We've heard that some stores will be closing early today in Lincoln. Do you know if stores have been given any sort of guidance to close early for safety precautions?
I'm not aware that anyone was directed to close early. I think that store owners are just looking at the curfew and recognizing that no one will be legally allowed to be a patron of their stores after the curfew begins. And tonight that's at 9 p.m. Unless, excuse me, unless they are stores that sell medicine and people can be out to get medicine, of course. And another question? Any other questions from the media? Okay.
Mayor, would you let people know, reporters know, that if they have questions and they weren't able to get in because of technical difficulties, that they can send me an email?
Okay. I want to relay information from our city communications manager, Diane Gonzalez, that if you had any technical difficulty in participating in this Zoom press conference, please email Diane Gonzalez, dgonzalez@lincoln.ne.gov, and we will get your question answered as soon as we are able to. And with that, I'd like to close the briefing. Thank you.